Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Sean.
And I'm Chad.
And today we have Tal with Perception Point joining us to talk more about the browser security features that are available on their platform. All right, so we'll go ahead and start, Tal. And I guess we'll start with just an introduction of you and kind of what you do at Perception Point.
Cool. So I'm the CTO at Perception Point. My background is a couple of decades in the industry in cybersecurity, starting my career in the Israeli Ministry of Defense in cyber offense, and having a bunch of experiences building startups in the enterprise software and cyber domains. My company, actually, Isolate, was recently acquired by Perception Point, and this is how I became the CTO here.
Awesome. Well, Secure Cyber Defense uses Perception Point. We use you for our email filtering, and one of the main reasons why we went to you was because of the AI advancements. But in my recent visit to Tel Aviv with you, we had other discussions about other solutions that Perception Point offers as well, and one of those was around the browser isolation business. Can you just kind of give us an update on kind of where that industry is and where it's going?
Definitely. So maybe to take a step back regarding web security and browser security in general. So as you know, originally secure web gateways, web proxies were the go-to solution for securing the web and users browsing websites that could be risky. This has evolved over the years to remote browser isolation with a bunch of solutions in this space, basically taking the browser and moving it away from the user's device and isolating it in a VM somewhere in the cloud. But this technology is also being phased out for new browser security solutions that have emerged in the market in the last couple of years. And I would say there's two main categories for this. One is custom browsers based on Chromium, which offer you a new experience on a hardened browser, and another category of browser extensions that are security focused and give you more security controls in the browser. But in general, for both of these approaches, the idea of this modern browser security paradigm is to build security controls into the browser in a native way instead of putting it in a gateway somewhere. Because eventually the action, the malicious content, the malicious user actions are happening in the browser. And up until this point, there's been a blind spot on what's going on inside the browser, or there was some additional latency with remote browser isolation solutions. So this is how this new category came to be. I hope I'm making sense.
No, it is. It does make sense. I know back when Chad and I were in Tel Aviv, we had kind of some experience with Team8. There were a couple companies that they had been investing in. One was called Talon.
Yeah, and those were really the hardened browsers that you had discussed, right? I mean, those were standalone browsers that were kind of purpose built. And we've kind of, when Sean and I were over there, it was probably February of 23. We actually saw a lot of those, right? And there was a lot of buzz kind of about those for a short period of time, and then they just kind of disappeared, right? I mean, they just kind of went off the radar. But Perception Point's taking a different approach to that, right? Can you kind of talk a little bit about, the extension and what you're doing there?
For sure. So before I just dive into the actual solution from Perception Point, just to emphasize the pain points that we're trying to solve specifically, I would say that number one is the fact that threats do get in regardless of secure web gateways or existing technologies, because those types of solutions have a hard time detecting in-depth malicious content that get delivered to the user. It could be that some of the content gets detonated only in the browser when the user is actually doing some action, and only when the real user is operating, then the malicious content is unveiled. But also the insider threat of a user that can use the browser to exfiltrate a mass amount of data through the browser via the various SaaS apps that we all access on a day-to-day basis. Basically, those new SaaS apps don't have the DLP controls to stop clipboard printing, screenshots, and many other exfiltration vectors. So what we've done with Perception Point's advanced browser security solution is basically create a browser extension that works on any standard browser, be it Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, or any other Chromium-based browser. You can easily force install that extension on all managed devices and even require it as a mandatory extension for third parties on unmanaged devices. So you force install that extension. And now the browser extension is running in the background. It doesn't need to tunnel all of the traffic through our gateways. It's basically inspecting what the user does silently. And whenever you visit a website or download a file or try to exfiltrate some data, then the security controls can kick in. So if you're visiting a phishing website, that only gets unveiled when you as a user fill in some password or complete a CAPTCHA and then detonates in the browser, the extension sees that, and using a lot of advanced technology like image recognition and machine learning can understand that it's a phishing intent and stop that page dynamically when we bump into it. And similarly for downloads, if a user downloads a file, we will inspect that file before the user gets access to it, running through all of our detection engines in the cloud, including our own proprietary sandbox technology and many other engines. And only if it's clean will we let the user gain access to that file. We also inspect third-party extensions that you might install as a user, and many of them are actually malicious or unwanted extensions. The Chrome store is filled with those types of unwanted extensions. So we scan those and give them risk scores to block them automatically. And as I mentioned, we also are able to protect against insiders that try to exfiltrate data out of sensitive web apps. And if the organization wants, for example, to block a user from taking data out of Salesforce.com, we can set up controls to prevent clipboard printing, screenshots, downloads, uploads, and many other types of exfiltration attempts. So that's in a very turbo mode, nutshell explanation of our extension.
Do you have any kind of inside knowledge, just information on why the industry got so excited and browser, this type of browser isolation technology was such a thing, and then it just went quiet? Why did the industry go quiet?
Right. So I think I would differentiate between two different kind of paradigms. One is browser isolation, and another is browser security, which sounds very similar, but it's so I think the browser isolation, you're definitely right. It kind of faded away because isolation with a remote browser or some kind of other isolation is in many cases challenging for the user in terms of the experience, the compatibility with websites, the cost of it behind the scenes. So, and the need to work on any type of browser. So this kind of approach has faded away. Regarding the new browser security category, I think it's actually still trendy from what I'm hearing with customers, and a lot of the prospects that we talk to have already a project looking to invest in this next generation of browser security. And I think you still see the big players, including Talon, that is now Palo Alto, Island, which I know is doing well, Perception Point, Layer X, and a bunch of others are competing for this space. And I think there's a lot of excitement still on that. Eventually it depends on what type of organization you are. I think for especially the small, medium businesses that want to have a single product that can do a lot of protection on the browser instead of deploying secure web gateways and more heavy solutions, this could be a great alternative. And a lot of the customers we're talking to are really interested in that still.
That's awesome. I mean, I think DLP, something I see in my practice a lot is customers really struggle with DLP. And I was watching some of your YouTube videos this morning. That's something that I think you guys do really well that a lot of companies are struggling with, right? So maybe kind of talk about just that aspect of it and how the browser is contained with the extension, and people are trying to put things up to Dropbox, to OneDrive. They're downloading it to their local laptops and then taking it out the door with them. This could really be a good solution for that.
100%. I think, as I mentioned, the explosion of SaaS applications in the enterprise and the fact that the browser is now the number one application everybody is using for a variety of purposes, including cloud storage solutions like the ones you mentioned, but many, many others, of course. And having the control in the browser and the flexibility to decide based on the content type, based on the website you're visiting, what type of DLP controls do I want to put in place is super powerful. For example, I'll name a few features that we've built on this space specifically. One is when you're downloading a massive amount of files in a short time frame, it could be from any type of SaaS app. Maybe it's your hosted box.com instance. If we detect a lot of sensitive content in your downloads in a short period of time, we can send an alert to the admin, hey, Joe is downloaded this amount of sensitive content. And the detection of sensitive content in our case is based on LLMs. So we're not requiring you to define regular expressions and patterns. So it's kind of a turnkey solution that works out of the box to detect those types of mass exfiltration attempts. Of course, DLP has its inherent issues, because you can never make it perfect, right? There's so many ways for users to exfiltrate data, but we give you the controls to decide where you want to toggle up all of the restrictions. For example, if it's a highly sensitive SaaS app, or maybe even a legacy web app that you control with lots of personal information of your customers, you can turn on everything that I mentioned, like clipboard printing, screenshots, downloads, uploads, and more, to prevent really any type of exfiltration. And a second thing I want to mention is the Gen AI category of SaaS apps in this context. Customers are super interested on this front. There's so many different Gen AI applications, ChatGPT and 1,000 others. And the challenges that our customers are telling us they have is, number one, in some cases, they want to restrict access to Gen AI, period. And by doing this, the browser extension, we can limit this in a very elegant way. And we give you this category of generative AI websites that you can just block. You can also decide only to warn the user before they enter the website and show them the acceptable use policy of your company, to warn them against what is allowed and what is not. And even if you do allow access, we can prevent a user from inputting sensitive data into, let's say, ChatGPT. As soon as you type in your prompt some sensitive information, we kick in and alert you as a user and send an alert to the admin that sensitive content has been input into those chatbots. And this is, again, based on machine learning and large language models to detect the sensitive content being typed into large language models. So this is a big, I think, trend, and we see a lot of, kind of driving, a lot of what is driving browser security is also the adoption of Gen AI apps in a secure way. And that's another thing that we can offer as part of our extension.
So that's awesome. I speak a lot on Gen AI, and just did it this weekend, and talked a lot about a lot of the concerns with Gen AI and how to protect yourself. So this is really good to know. So I have really just two follow-up questions, and we'll kind of wrap things up. One is, is this something that is applicable to mobile devices as well? I assume this is, iPad, iPhone, Android, across the board. And then the second question is, how do the browser updates themselves impact the solution? Meaning that, things like Chrome and Edge, now are almost continually updating themselves. Does that impact you in a negative way?
Great questions. So regarding the mobile protection, we already have an early availability version of our solution for iOS, iPhones, iPads. It's an extension for Safari, mobile Safari, so that you can get the same phishing protection and everything I mentioned in those browsers in Safari. And for Android, unfortunately, not yet. You can, of course, decide that as a company, maybe you don't want to allow access to sensitive apps on Android based on conditional access policies. So for now, you have a way to block that if you don't want that to happen. But unfortunately, we still don't have a solution on Android. Regarding the compatibility with the browsers, we've designed the solution to be highly compatible with any Chromium-based browser. And specifically, we're using something, I'll go a bit geeky technical here. On the extension side, there's two variants. There's Manifest v2 extensions and Manifest v3 extensions. Manifest v2 is the old school extensions, and they are bound to break eventually when the browsers update. Some of our competitors are based on Manifest v2, and I think they'll have to phase it away and adopt Manifest v3. Manifest v3 is the official future-looking standard for browser extensions that all of the entire browser industry is aligned on, including Chrome, Edge, Safari, and we only use standard APIs of that extension API when we develop our product, and therefore we get compatibility by design with all of the browsers, including any browser update. We never had any of our extensions break because of a browser update. Luckily, because of this design philosophy and adopting the modern standard for browser extensions and using official APIs that the browser offers. So I hope it answered the question.
No, it did for sure. Well, that's it. That's all we have for today. I really appreciate you, Tal, for joining us today. We'll put more information about Perception Point down in the description. But for now, I'm Sean.
I'm Chad.
And thanks for joining us on CS Cyber, Tal. We really appreciate it.